Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to today's session, How to Boost Your Acumatica ROI. So, before we get started, I want to go over just a few housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar whenever they come to mind. We're going to do all of our questions at the end of the session, and you can get those questions entered in the Q&A section of your GoToWebinar panel. You can also change the view. We've got a few presenters here that I'll talk about in just a moment. So if you need to zoom in on the deck, change the presenter view, zoom in on any of those aspects, you can do that at any time in your GoToWebinar panel. We've also included a copy of the presentation deck itself, as well as a really great resource document for Acumatica in the handout section. So be sure to go over there and download those as well. And then we are also recording this presentation. So if you know someone that was unable to attend today, or you want to check it out again, in a week or a couple weeks, or share it with your coworkers, we're going to send out that link to this presentation tomorrow afternoon. And finally, we'd appreciate your participation in our closing poll and survey. So with that said, SWK is always here to help you get the most out of your software, your solutions, and we're really here to help you fulfill a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing your tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So let me go ahead and introduce you to today's presenters. With us today, we have Brian Rutledge. He is a customer success manager. Brian, can you say hello?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks, Courtney. Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending. Just a quick bit about me. Longtime ERP user, Acumatica user before I ever got into the field, recovering ERP consultant as well. Spend my time now helping folks to understand Acumatica's licensing policies and making sure that you've got everything you need from the team at SWK and at Acumatica to be able to be successful long-term.
Great, thank you, Brian. We've also got John Nicholson with us today. He is an Acumatica Solutions Architect. John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is John Nicholson. Nice to see everyone today. I am a member of the Solution Architects team at SWK, and specifically in the last year, I joined the team and I work with customers to help optimize and maximize their use of systems. Previous to that, I spent 10 years as an Acumatica implementation consultant, and I look forward to assisting you with things that may maximize your system in the future. Thanks.
Great, thank you, John. And last but not least, we have Carla Brown. She's our Vice President of Partnerships and Alliance. Carla, can you say hello?
Sure, Carla Brown, VP of Partners and Alliances, a former business owner and many, many years of consulting in the Acumatica and other spaces. And my role here is working with any of the add-on solutions, so things that Acumatica out of the box might not work for. So looking into some of those solutions, and I work with John and Brian on helping solution those items.
Great, thank you, team. So we are going to go ahead and dive in, and I think we're going to kick it off with Brian, who is going to tell us about leveraging SWK and Acumatica customer resources. So Brian, I'll hand it off to you.
Great, thank you so much. So yeah, to kick things off, we're going to talk about what are the SWK resources that are available to you. And these are a few that we're going to start off with, and I'll start with my own position as a customer success manager. We're here to advocate for you inside of SWK. The kind of goal in my mind is to give folks the feeling that they've got a cousin who works here, right? Someone you can call who understands the situation, who understands your situation, and can speak for you on your behalf internally to make sure that everything that we need to do for you to succeed is being done. I'm also going to be and anyone who's a customer success manager is going to be a key subject matter expert for Acumatica licensing and policy. So we're talking about ROI today. When it comes to licensing and policy, they kind of impact the investment side of things, right? It's consumption based, in most cases, license. So understanding how you're using your license, getting the most out of it, right sizing it for you can really have an impact on what's the size of the investment that you make in the tool. Also here to give folks, guidance on upgrades and renewals, and help to just triage any questions that you might have, ultimately helping you to navigate SWK and all the teams here, because there are many services, whether it be our managed cloud services, our development team. There's lots of different experts that we can connect you with to be able to affect some sort of positive change for your system. But make sure that you know who to talk to and how to navigate to the correct person. Your customer success manager is always going to be a great place to start. Moving to the customer account manager, these folks are your primary points of contact. Most of you, if you're customers already, you understand who those folks are. You reach out to them when you, let's say, needed to add on an ISV or get some pricing for adding a module to Acumatica. They can, set up, make connections with folks like John on our solutions architect team, pull in Carla if we need to have some expertise there, or even just set up a demo, either with our team or with an ISV partner so that you can see and understand and evaluate those things that you're looking to add to your system. They're also going to be the folks who are going to ultimately process any orders and agreements, right? So when you do ultimately decide to, whether it be adding resources to your tier or, Velixo looks cool, so we're going to add that in, those will be the folks who actually send those orders off to you to sign. And again, they're a great first point of contact to be able to help you to navigate SWK services and teams. And then the other folks that I think, not everybody at SWK understands or are available to them, and I really want to point out, are our strategic technology advisors. Internally, we call them the STAT team. They're made up of folks who are deeply experienced, not just in Acumatica, but in lots of ERP software and the associated tools that go with them. We do, of course, have Acumatica MVPs on that team too, which means that they're a great person to connect to when you want to do not necessarily planning for, what am I adding in my next renewal, but looking at, the next 5 years out. We've got acquisition plans, or we're going to be rolling in these new things, or we're going to be reporting things differently in our accounting. What's the best way to go? Having somebody to understand what your long-term strategy is and help to weigh in, and also just giving some high-level solution advice, right? Whether it's looking at expanding your storage, making sure that you understand all the options that are available to you, just as an example. And then certainly if you're looking for someone to have that executive level engagement, whether it's pulling somebody in to talk to your CEO or members of your board, or connecting you with executives on the SWK side, or even executives from the Acumatica side. A lot of times our strategic technology advisor, you can see why we call it STAT, are going to be the right folks to be able to facilitate those connections. And again, all of these folks that I've mentioned here are really going to be the right folks to help you to understand and navigate SWK's services and teams to make sure that you're connecting with the right people in a timely fashion. I'll also point out that everyone that I've just mentioned is going to be complimentary all the time that you spend with them, and not just these folks, other folks too, like John and our solutions architect team. So those are just some of the resources in terms of the people that we have available to you to be able to understand your system, to be able to grow, and to be able to plan for what's coming next in your environment. And then of course we've got Acumatica resources as well. So I'll touch on a few of those. Some of these you're going to be familiar with. Others you may not be, but I want to make sure that everybody here has a chance to understand all of the Acumatica resources that are available to them. So the first of these that I want to touch on is one that I hope everybody here is already registered for, and that's the Acumatica community. The Acumatica community is filled with important information, not just things like tips or questions and answers between users, which is certainly there, but even things like important announcements, whether there's going to be, if you want to make a feature request and give folks the opportunity to upvote that absolutely is going to be a way to give Acumatica feedback about how to improve the system. But I think some of the more important things when you think about, just the long-term stewardship of your investment in Acumatica is understanding the changes and fixes and the release notes as new versions come out. And the community is where those things are housed. So like for instance, there was the relatively recent release of Acumatica version 24 R2. All those release notes are going to be there on the community, and you can see not just instructions on how to upgrade or things like that. Yes, they're included, but there's some links to specific documents, right? So the full release note, so you can see everything that's included. Quite a big document. If you're looking for something a little bit more digestible, they have a changes and fixes document, which is really great if you just want to understand what are the new things in a particular functional area of the system. And then also if you've got folks who are doing some work on the development side, maybe creating your own customization packages for Acumatica, then there's going to be development notes for that version there too. So And that goes back to, all the supported versions notes will be there. So great resource to be able to understand, the technical kind of specifics of each version of your system. And there's so much more. I'm just touching on a few things. Couldn't encourage folks more to get connected with the Acumatica community, particularly for either, organizations that are just getting started in Acumatica, or let's say, you've had some change, some growth, some turnover, whatever the case may be, you have new users to Acumatica in your organization. All of those folks are going to be well served by the next resource, which is the Open University. Again, if you haven't registered or used the Open University before, strongly recommend it. There's things like, of course, you can get certificates if you want to be able to show your skill in using a particular part of Acumatica, useful if you're going to be a developer, admin, or even, looking at doing consulting. But I think ultimately what's going to be most valuable for most customers are taking a look at things like the learning paths. And I'll recommend one in particular, that's the end user learning path. If you're trying to give folks in your organization a place to start in Open University, that would be the place. Something that's maybe a little bit more digestible than the full learning path, which is going to include a number of courses that they can kind of complete all online. All of this is free. Is that if you want something a little smaller, a little bit more digestible, they've got these great job aids. So if you've got a specific, let's say, someone working in the warehouse or someone doing AR, their specific tasks that they'll complete in the system, those instructions and those courses have been gathered together in a particular smaller, kind of more compact form that Acumatica calls job aids. I think they're another great thing to hand out or to get folks connected with, particularly if you know that they're not going to spend necessarily a large amount of time in Open University right off the bat, and you just want to give them something to get them started. The job aids are great. And then, of course, Acumatica includes all of their webinars available up on the Open University as well. So lots of great resources there for self-led instruction, and really that kind of investment of time on behalf of you and the folks in your organization in understanding how to leverage Acumatica as a tool, of course, is going to pay dividends in your actual day-to-day use, but it also pays off just in when you have interactions with either Acumatica's support team, SWK's Acumatica support team, or any of the technical experts around Acumatica that SWK brings to bear, because they'll have a better understanding of the application. You can describe your issue or what you need out of the system a little bit better and be able to understand what's being recommended to you a little bit better. So yeah, the Open University is another really great one. Strongly encourage everyone to check that out. And the last one here that I'll just briefly touch on is the portal, which is basically a self-service portal that Acumatica has available online. This is great for directly accessing and creating cases for Acumatica for support. You can also, inside of this self-service portal, manage the access to the other members in your organization. So, if you're the primary contact, you've got access, but you want your head of IT and a few other folks to also be able to submit something like a support ticket directly to Acumatica. You can go into this portal, make sure that they're users, and make sure that they've got the right access rights to be able to create those things. So if you need any more information about some of these things that have already been mentioned, one of the things that Courtney mentioned will be included in the handout for today's webinar is just a one-page document explaining that exactly how you can get registered to make use of any of these resources. And the good news is that even though there are 3 different separate resources here, Acumatica has one registration process to be able to access all 3. So you register once and you're going to be able to access all 3 of these things. And there are actually instructions in there as well on how to submit a support ticket to Acumatica if you've never done that before. It's something that it's in PDF and you can share it with anyone in your organization. And we encourage you to do that to get as many folks registered, particularly to use the community and the Open University, as many as possible. One little asterisk here on the portal, and I just want to point it out, even though it's there in small print, if you go onto the portal and try to submit a support ticket and you're unable to, it may be because you don't have a support subscription. The vast majority of customers we work with do at least have basic support. If you're not sure, you can always reach out and we'll confirm that for you. If for some reason you have trouble with access, there's instructions for exactly what to do, also included in the handout. So then I want to move on to what specific things. When I was asked to speak a little bit on how folks can get more return on their investment in Acumatica, these are the first things that came to mind for me. As a user, this button right here, that question mark button, it's your best friend. You're on a screen that you haven't seen before, you're not familiar with, and you want to understand, what does that field mean? What does that drop down mean? What's going to happen if I click this? You can click right on the little question mark button and find that form reference. There's going to be a form reference for most of the screens in the system, and that form reference will take you to a wiki page that really just outlines everything that you're seeing in the user interface. So what are the drop downs, what are the columns, with some description and a little bit more information about what the use of that part of the system is. So you can answer a lot of your own questions and unstick a lot of early on getting stuck just by using the question mark button and checking out the form reference. And then a few other bookmarks I'll recommend are your license monitoring console, which I won't go into a lot of detail here, but again, I mentioned at the beginning that we're looking at ROI, the investment for a consumption-based model like Acumatica has for most customers. It's going to change depending upon the consumption. So the license monitoring console, which all of you will have inside of your Acumatica system, will tell you exactly how much resources you're using versus how much you're licensed for. And the idea is to try to get that to be as right size fit as possible. Most folks coming into Acumatica may not have had great indication. So it's something that you want to look at, particularly in that first year or 6 months, and then start to have a routine around checking in, making sure that you're continuing to be right sized. If you're paying for more than you need, you can reduce it at the time of your renewal. And any time throughout the course of the year, if you need additional resources, you'll be able to add those to your license as well. A few other things to point out on consumption, space usage. There's another screen that you can take a look at because additional space will also increase your investment up to a point. And then the Acumatica agreements page, which there's a link right here when you look at the presentation after the fact. It's going to give you your subscription SaaS agreement, end user license agreement, and also the licensing guides. All three of those are important things that I go through with customers all the time to help them to understand, what exactly it is they've agreed to, how it is that performance is supposed to be in their system, and then the licensing guide will give you an idea of what are the options you have to either add additional modules or add additional performance to your system. A lot of these things are gathered together for you in one spot by SWK in our Acumatica Resource Center, which is something that I encourage you to talk to your customer success manager or your account manager about. We'll make sure that that gets shared out with you as well. So just in summary here, for new users, encourage you and your team to register for the community and for the university. Favorite the license monitoring console in your system and make sure at least 1 or 2 people understand how to interpret it. Always share your questions or issues with SWK. If we don't know, we can't help. And usually if we do know, we can help. And also, whether you're submitting to SWK or directly to Acumatica, the most important thing when someone has an issue, whether it be performance of a screen or not understanding what to do next, or there's an error message that's come up, whatever it is, great documentation means faster resolution, and that's across the board true. So I want to make sure that new users, particularly folks that maybe weren't users of ERP systems in the past that are starting to use it, it can be a little overwhelming. We want to get their problems resolved quickly to kind of reduce that overwhelm and encourage adoption. The way to do that is to make sure that things get documented well so that we can resolve those issues quickly. For experienced users, I want to make sure that folks have a routine around checking that license monitoring console, again, to make sure that your investment isn't going to be more than it needs to be. And if you need additional resources, that we can be aware of that in advance. Make sure that you have an annual upgrade plan in place with the whole organization supporting it, right? Because folks are going to need to be involved in testing. So, if the sales team isn't really on board with doing testing at a particular time, we don't want the upgrade to drag. There's some issues that can come on with that. So getting buy-in from everybody about what the plan for upgrades is going to be and what everyone's role in completing the testing around upgrades is going to be, and having that in place early on. And then make sure you're taking advantage of SWK's resources. Inform us about your long-term strategy so that we can help to guide you towards what's ultimately going to be the best for you. And of course, regularly check out the SWK blog and Acumatica community for updates and important announcements. So to talk a little bit more about maximizing your ROI inside of Acumatica, I'll hand it off to John, John, take it away.
All right, thanks, Brian. So you've made your investment in Acumatica, and like a lot of things, you are kind of focused on getting the first stage done, which is the initial implementation. As you finally get through that step, you're really looking at trying to emphasize, maximize, use that system to improve the return. And so I want to talk about some capabilities now that might be kind of phase two. Maybe you've explored some of these in your first phase of implementation, but oftentimes as you kind of get through that initial production conversion, it's time to take a look at some of the things that can be done. Now, these are all native capabilities. So these are capabilities that exist. Briefly, we're going to give you a quick example of each one of these capabilities. And the intent today is to provide some awareness. You certainly aren't going to get enough exposure to this to be, trained or develop a skill, but that's certainly a second step that you can take. Briefly, automation schedules are an area that can really assist with production, reducing load on the system. As you start to do things, you'll start to see that you could probably automate some of the processes through various schedule activity. We'll talk about business events briefly. This is a concept that exists and can work in conjunction with an automation schedule. Also task management, and this is really about ad hoc task management where we're going to connect transactions in the system to people and obviously the work that needs to be done. We'll talk briefly about the mobile application, again, something that is available, oftentimes is underutilized. And then lastly, a couple of items that affect the use of Acumatica through the generic inquiries, this concept of side panels and mass field and action updates, two capabilities that you can take advantage of as well. First one we'll talk about real quick is automation schedules. And if you're familiar with Acumatica, you're familiar with Acumatica workspaces. What I've got highlighted here is the receivables workspace. And in every workspace, the menu items are categorized or have groupings basically around the category. And I'm focused right now on the processes category. And the reason I'm looking at this category is every task or menu item you see in that process category can be scheduled. So this is something we might want to take advantage of for things that we're going to need to run and might take a little bit of time. Something like the concept of preparing statements. If you're going to send a statement to your customer every month, that can take a couple of minutes, or if you've got thousands of customers, it might take a couple of hours. So scheduling this in advance, maybe running it during off hours, great way to kind of maximize the performance of your system and also, spend less time working with these individual steps. Now, when you make a selection on one of those process screens or process tasks, you will see a process clock or a schedule clock on these at the top of the toolbar on these screens. This is your indication that you can set up an automation schedule. So this is one of the things you'll look for. And the idea here is you'll schedule this for some future period, and the frequency and the conditions and some of the values that you might want to run this schedule on can all be set up in advance, and then that'll take place in the background. You'll be able to access automation schedules anytime, of course, using the universal search at the very top of the navigation bar. You can go ahead and type in automation schedule statuses and see all the automation schedules that are running. At the top of this grouping, we've got a monthly statement preparation task, and so this will run based, once a month, so we can get the statements prepared ahead of time, and then obviously they can be emailed or sent out to customers. Another underutilized area is business events, and business events can work in conjunction with automation schedules. And there are a lot of sample business events in some of the sales demonstration data systems, and there's good background and good reference material in the Open University on business events as well. One of the things that I'm doing here is just highlighting a business event that the concept might be that, people might pay their bill if they haven't paid it, if they know ahead of time by a day or so, get a slight little nudge. Some people may never pay on time, but others might be notified, and you might find out you could improve the cash flow a little bit if you create an automation schedule in conjunction with a business event to evaluate the particular invoice due date, and then send a notification. Just real briefly, a business event requires a trigger, and we'll talk briefly about that, but trigger conditions need to be set up. And here we're triggering by schedule, and that means we're going to run a automation schedule that will review the invoices once a day, look for invoices that are due tomorrow, and then based on that condition, they'll go ahead and make a notification. The notifications are typically then done on the subscribers tab in a business event. So whether you want to send an email notification or a push notification to a mobile device, or using SMS text notifications, ultimately even Teams notifications can be used here. Now, business events will go beyond notifications. You can certainly create tasks. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Or you can create an import scenario and maybe update or import new information. So a lot of capability here. Pretty much the sky's the limit in terms of things that can be done here. You just have to be able to kind of think through the tasks that you'd like to automate, and then ultimately, find an appropriate trigger. Now, the next screen here, we're triggering by schedule, so we're going to run a schedule, and then once that schedule is run to review the invoices, the ones that are due tomorrow, we'll go ahead and send a notification out for. But you can certainly trigger a business event by a change in the data, and you might end up having information saved, stored, and then that change to a certain type of data or certain element can trigger a business event as well. And then lastly, you can also trigger them by actions, such as taking the hold off of a purchase order or something like that. So definitely we're giving you a little awareness of some of the things you can do with business events. This is an area you'll want to explore more. One of my favorite areas in Acumatica is task management. And this is really ad hoc task management. This is not to be confused with, say, approval maps, where we're going through a predefined set of conditions and approving documents or transactions. Task management is really about all the other things that we might do with information that's stored in Acumatica. A lot of times in organizations, this information is going through email. Somebody sends an email to take a look at a particular opportunity or a particular purchase order or something like that. You've got all your employees typically set up in Acumatica, so setting up tasks can be a very efficient way to increase visibility in the organization and also connect them to those transactions. Now, specifically, I've opened up a task here. This is just a sample task where somebody's called in, left a message. And one of the things, once this task is created, we can go ahead and identify an owner. Maxwell Baker, in this case, is our fictional employee here that is the owner. So he'll get assigned this task. And then we can relate to this task those transactions. And the transaction in this case is an opportunity that a particular sales team is working with the customer. And so when they pull that task up, when Max looks at his to-do list effectively, he can pull that task up and connect directly to that opportunity with the icon that's identified there on the screen. Now, just to emphasize this concept of connecting people to the transactions in the system, virtually any entity can be connected through a task. So whether I connect it to a journal transaction or a GL batch, or connect it to a particular customer record or employee record, again, tasks are an easy way to kind of increase that visibility, identify work that needs to be done. Maybe it's pushed to a particular individual or a work group, and then you're able to easily kind of connect to Acumatica in that manner. Another area I think that doesn't get a lot of review, especially as you're kind of looking at your first phase of implementation, is the mobile device. Now, some organizations do some amount of work on mobile devices right off the bat, but a lot of organizations aren't aware that you can use the mobile device to effectively get quick access to Acumatica and improve visibility as well. Now, these are native applications, so you can download them from the respective app stores for the Android and Apple devices. what this will typically do, even if you don't use it as much of a tool to do, say, actual data entry, you can quickly identify things like overdue tasks. And so the tasks we were just talking about, if we're assigning tasks for some reason, then I might want to take action or quickly access those tasks. And in the screenshot we see there, we've got overdue tasks as an option. And those panels that are identified on the mobile device are something that you can configure. So I encourage everybody to kind of take a look at the mobile device as well. Last two items I want to touch on, again, just awareness here. If you've used Acumatica, you've certainly experienced generic inquiries. This is the list function that's present in the user interface. And one of the things that I think you want to pay attention to, probably you've already experienced a little bit, but keeps increasing with each upgrade, is the use of side panels. Now, the concept behind side panels is to allow an easier way to navigate large record sets. In this case, I'm looking at a purchase order screen, and I might, be interested in the details on this purchase order. And typically, I might select the order number, in which case I would be launched into the order and could examine it. But it might be more efficient just to work through a series of selected orders to identify a particular purchase that I'm looking for. Now, in the case on the right, you can see that highlighted in red is a series of side panels. And so the purchase order details can be directly accessed. If we go ahead and select that purchase order side panel, then you're able to take a look then at the detail lines on that purchase order. Now, what's useful about the side panel at this point is I can now select other purchase orders very quickly and take a look at their details without having to enter and exit the individual purchase orders. So I think this would typically improve most people's access and visibility. Also, any related data that is appropriate and can be connected to the basic data of the purchase order can be highlighted and set up in a side panel. And here we're taking a look at the vendor information that's connected to the vendor for the purchase order, and maybe some information that's quick to a buyer's, quick to be supported by the buyer, knowing how much we might owe to the vendor, maybe any prepayment requests that have been placed. That kind of thing is another thing you can surface in a side panel very nicely. Customization, of course, can be done to the generic inquiry to add side panels. You will need the customization role in Acumatica. If you do have that role, you'll see at the top of the screen, you'll be able to edit your generic inquiry, and then you can navigate to a place where you can customize your side panel. Here we're highlighting the fact that we are in the generic inquiry customization, and we're actually moved over to the navigation tab. And so you can see that a number of side panels have been added, and additional information can be added as well. If you have a relationship in the data that you can connect to, then you can go ahead and create a side panel, and oftentimes, again, improve kind of the efficiency that users have when they're navigating the application. Last thing I want to talk about on the generic inquiries is just the ability to do updates, both with actions and data, to the individual records in the inquiry on a faster basis. Again, we can access each individual record, we can make data changes, but one of the things you might find is you can improve efficiency if you can select 2 or 3 or multiple records at once. So this is another capability in that customization area for the generic inquiry. Again, we'll take a look here at this customization. Now, when you're looking at the generic inquiry, there's also a tab called the entry point. And here you can enable a couple of selections, mass actions and record updates, or mass record updates. And this will allow you to both update fields and also take action that might be something like removing a hold on a purchase order through multiple records. And as an example, when you enable that capability, you'll see a new selector column that'll be part of your new generic inquiry or your updated generic inquiry. And this would allow you to make appropriate selections. You can certainly filter ahead of time and then make individual selections. and then go ahead and take that mass action, such as remove a hold or make a data change that would be updated as well. So again, very powerful feature here. So that's just kind of a quick highlight on about 6 areas that are native to Acumatica that hopefully you're taking advantage of. Sometimes though, quite often when I'm working with customers, we're looking to extend beyond some of those native capabilities. Carla Brown assists with that area. I'm going to turn it over to her, and she's going to talk a little bit about enhancing Acumatica with third-party integrations.
Thank you, John. Lots of good information here. So welcome, everybody. So yes, my role here is kind of looking at when you exceed the out-of-the-box functionality with Acumatica, and those can come in different forms, right? Whether it's a business process, whether it's you're in high volume and you want to automate, that could be with accounts payable, with accounts receivable, credit card processing, lots of different things. And automate tasks like we were talking, like John was just showing, but something beyond that. We also have a lot of add-on tools for reporting and business intelligence, or BI reporting and data analytics. Warehouse management, so more complex warehouse management solutions. We've got things like e-commerce add-ons and digital sales channels. And we also have a whole suite of payroll and HR, or human resource management solutions, to do things like time capture all the way through hire to fire, and obviously run your payroll. So the next slide here, these are only some of the third-party products that we endorse and we work with. So I could add to this, but it was getting too small as I added to it. So one of the things that I really want to emphasize, as you go down and you start saying, hey, I need something in addition to my out-of-the-box Acumatica, we really want to work with you. We do this, I work with the STAT team, as Brian spoke about, and I work with John, as he said, to really make sure that if you're looking for something like an AP or an accounts payable automation tool, what is the best one that fits your needs? We might have 1 or 2 or potentially 3 products that that differentiate a little bit. So we help you, and that's a complimentary service. We help you figure out what is the best solution for you. So we really love for you to come and work with us on those. I have a long-standing relationship, and we at SWK with a lot of these vendors, so we know everything from not only product functionality, but support, implementation, how well they work with, from the delivery standpoint, escalation standpoint. So that's kind of my role, is to manage those relationships. And we put a lot of time and thought into selecting various products. And another big piece is integration. So how well does it integrate with Acumatica? Those are very, very important things as you go through the process. So as I mentioned before, automation tools. So we've got a lot of things we're seeing in the automation world right now is, automating your accounts payable, everything from invoice capture to making your payments. On the accounts receivable side, doing more than credit card processing, potentially counter sales, warehouse and shipping manifest. Those are very common things that most of you are probably doing, automating your warehouse, where we have scanners, etc. We've got different solutions that we can help do discovery and work through what's the best fit for you. Electronic data interchange, so EDI transactions. If you're working with the Walmarts, we can help you discover what's the best fit there, depending on what your EDI needs are. And e-commerce, there are a couple products we've got that we work with. We even have options to help you with the agency side of it, so helping build your website, do the front end of website management, and then obviously the back end, bringing it all into and interfacing with the Acumatica product. And then sales tax, we also have solutions there. I think that it goes unnoticed. Setting up sales tax schedules within your ERP or your Acumatica system is kind of a pain. So we can help you bridge when's the point where you've got a breaking point where you're going to actually save money, time, and vulnerability for legalities by automating that process. So we, again, as we talked about, this is a complimentary service, so please do work with us. We're happy to help you find these additional solutions and help you through the journey, especially when there's multiple products that are out there that could interface. All right.
So now we're going to have Brian Rutledge back on to tell us a couple of real world success stories on how people have been able to increase their ROI. So Brian, thank you, Carla. We're going to hand it over to you now.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Carla and John. And you've actually been involved in some of these real world success stories, and I'll just touch on a few. I talked a little bit earlier about the license monitoring console. One example here was, something that we do regularly with customers, particularly in advance of renewal, but really at any time, whether there's a change in your business or you're just interested in learning more. We can do a review of that license monitoring console together. In this case, we actually uncovered some ways to improve the efficiency of their system. Customer was able to make some of those changes on their own. Those changes ended up reducing their transaction volume and improving their performance in Acumatica. The end result there was that they were able to reduce their resource tier at their next renewal, and that came around to saving them around $8,000. So that can vary a lot. If you've got a heavy resource usage and you're able to bring that down, you can save substantially more. It's something that you definitely want to keep an eye on. Another real world example is, just taking advantage of not just, some of the things that John talked about, for instance, in the built-in functionality of Acumatica, but really leveraging the Acumatica platform to extend beyond. So in this example, I had a customer who had some acquisitions that meant there was rapid growth going on. One of the things that was going to be a challenge for them that they could foresee was that the system storage was just going to be insufficient, what they were licensed for. And when we took a look at, adding some additional storage through Acumatica, even that started to seem like, is this the best option? Unfortunately, because it's a platform, there are more options. And so, the stat team was able to come in, the solutions architect came in, took a look at what their actual needs were, determined, probably the most cost-effective thing for your organization would be an integration with Amazon S3 for cloud storage. They were able to take that solution, move forward with it, get it implemented, and now they've got that seamless integration working, and they're saving a ton compared to having to pay for that same storage space with Acumatica, and there's some other advantages that come along with that as well. And that savings and advantages compared to their storage space from Acumatica is something that, again, they might not have recognized on their own. It really took working with some of the resources at SWK to kind of solution that out and find for them what was going to be the best fit, and it turned into a big win for everyone involved. So those are just a couple examples of real world success stories. Courtney, you want to take it back?
Yes, thank you, Brian. We always love to hear, a real world example. And as we wrap up here, we are just about to head into Q&A, and thank you everyone for all my presenters coming back on. They are ready to answer your questions. So we talked a lot about different resources today from Acumatica, different ways of return ROI, and I also want to mention just a couple of SWK resources. So like I said, you can download a copy of this presentation deck where you'll be able to click all of these links. So I'm not going to go into them all individually, but one, we do have a Acumatica resource page that has a ton of great information, dives into the different modules, different aspects, and links to a lot of the educational resources we put out over the years. You are at an SWK webinar, so thank you for joining us. We put on a ton of webinars throughout the year. So if you want to learn more specifics about some of those third-party add-ons Carla mentioned, we do webinars with those partners that tell you more about their product, new launches, goes into detail. You're at the Acumatica Education Series, so we will have, more sessions coming up in this. So don't miss, best practices for your upgrades. We've got a tips and tricks sessions coming up, so we're going to dive into a lot of detail on that. So there's just a lot of great things there throughout the year. And then our SWK blog, if you've never checked it out before, it has a lot of great articles, not only industry specific, but we just put out a blog on the new R2 for Acumatica. So that's where we go and we take, Acumatica, you can get a ton of details about the new R2 launch, but we kind of simplify it, put it in easier terms for you where you can dive in if you want. So that's another great place. And then finally, our YouTube channel, we do have a Acumatica specific playlist. So that is, sessions like this are on-demand webinars. That is tutorial videos, past information. So there's a lot of great information that you can find on our YouTube channel as well, and where you can get access to all of our past webinars in our on-demand playlist. So just a few things you can check out in addition to all the great resources Acumatica puts out. We're always trying to update and keep you educated. So with that said, I think it is time for some Q&A. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Ready.
So if you haven't got your question in yet, go ahead and get it in. We're also going to run a quick poll during the Q&A, but I have a couple questions I want to cover before we do that. So I think this one might be for Carla, but I saw on that third-party add-on slides that there were a couple HR and payroll options, and we had someone ask, what HR payroll options do you have for Acumatica?
We've got 3 or 4, and it's all depending. So we've got a couple. We've got Workforce Go, ADP. There's a product called Lumber. So there's different products that we will basically. I actually have an HCM or an HR person that we have a specialist in house that will get on the phone with you, kind of discuss all of your needs, what is needed for payroll, what's needed for time capture, all the way through hire to fire, and what that looks like. So we've got various different options. And we offer a free HCM review to kind of talk through what are those needs for your employees.
Got it. And then another question we had is, we showed a bunch of different of those immediate ROI things that you can do in the system. So John, I think probably for you, I had someone ask, what do I do if I need help configuring some of those aspects? And is that a free service?
Typically, what you're going to be able to do for free or complimentary is use the Open University. So I talked about business events. I talked about automation schedules. There you can go to the Open University and find particular guides. For instance, the system management guide on the Open University covers business events. And then side panels is typically covered by the what they call the data retrieval and analysis guide on the Open University. Now, once you kind of look at learning a little bit about it and attempting some of those, say in a test tenant on your own, if you'd still like some assistance, we can assist over the Acumatica support infrastructure that we have, or have the consulting team provide services, but both those are billable processes.
Got it. Great to know. And also, could you provide a little bit more information on where to get information specifically for business events?
So specifically, if you go to the Open University, there is a guide out there I mentioned called the System Maintenance Guide, and that's just one of the, there's many guides out there. But specifically, if you open that guide, there's a section where there's lessons by lesson index. And lesson 2.3 is called Scheduled Automated Processing. And this would actually give you quite a bit of detail about how to set up both business events and automation schedules, because they work oftentimes in conjunction with each other.
Okay. And I'm going to take a pause from our questions to run a quick poll. So we would appreciate your participation. Just curious next steps, you're welcome to continue to submit questions. I know we have a couple more to go through, but if you want some additional help with anything we talked about today, more information, you realize, oh, I want to dive into some more about those third-party add-ons, let us know. Just a way to raise your hand, if you'd like help configuring something, you want to learn more about those third-party add-ons, or there's just something else you have a question on after watching today's presentation. And while I leave this open, John, I'm going to go ahead with one of our other questions that we got in. And that's like, someone said, I understand that I can schedule processes, but can you also schedule reports?
Great question. We were looking at process screens when we were talking about automation schedules. And of course, we saw the process clock on those screens. You can schedule reports. So reports are something that oftentimes takes a fair amount of processing, especially if you have a long report, and so it makes sense to maybe run those after hours. It does require setting up a report template, and from there you have to go ahead and create an automation schedule that connects to that report template. I do have a quick link. Let me just look at this real quick. That this would be something that you could find in the wiki help very easily. So I'm going to put this into the chat. This would give you a way to kind of, this is an open help system out there, so it doesn't specifically go into your Acumatica instance, but you can quickly see kind of how you might schedule a report with a report template.
Great, thank you. And we'll also drop that link in the follow-up email for the webinar too. So you'll have that with the recording. So I think we're wrapping up on questions now. So team, just before we wrap things up, is there any final things you want to share or, any last minute things?
I do. We hope to see you all at Acumatica Summit. So we know registration's out. I think that's been mentioned too. So we'd love to see you all and meet you all in person.
Yeah, second that. Looking forward to meeting some of you folks
John
over at
Thursday,
Summit.
right?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great event. It's a good chance to get to meet some of the third-party folks and just get to know some of the folks that you work with day to day at SWK and Acumatica.
Yes, thank you, Carl. I feel like as a marketing person, I should have, thought of Acumatica.
Hey, we're a team. We got to work together.
Yeah, we got to
team,
cover everyone.
exactly.
So Summit is coming up in late January, and we always have a customer reception as well, in addition to the great summit put on by Acumatica. So we'd love to meet you, spend a little time, tell you everything you need to know, and really guide your summit experience. So keep an eye out for the emails. We're going to be sharing more information on Acumatica Summit, where you can register, where you can let us know if you're coming to our customer reception, and all the details you might need to know. Those will be forthcoming. I think we might even be sending you an email tomorrow. So definitely check that out. And we want to thank you for spending a bit of your Thursday with us. So thank you. And if you need to get any more resources, you can always look at swktech.com, email us at info@swktech.com, or reach out to your customer account manager or customer success manager, whoever that may be. So thank you, Carla, John, and Brian.
Thank you.
So much great information.
Yeah, thanks so
Have
much.
a great rest of your day.
Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye.